green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
And a good football Friday, a summer football Friday here on Birds 365. Everybody's taking downtime. Not your boys at Birds 365. McMullen, McDonald here, present and accounted for the 550th time.
Whoa, 550. I like
Nice.
those landmarks. 550.
Nice round number for Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. We'll hang with you for the next couple hours. And we got two good guests, Philly guys, coming your way. Johnny Mac, here's where I want to start today. Not on the show, not featured on the show today, but featured often is your boy Ed Kratz, fellow scribe from Sports Illustrated, who over the last couple of days put up the most underrated Philadelphia Eagle going into the 2023 season. And there is no wrong answer here. You can debate it. You can say don't agree, but there really is no wrong answer because it's a very subjective question. And it all depends on how you define in your own mind underrated. Different people will look at that differently. Who does Johnny Mack have as the most underrated Philadelphia going into 2020?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's about, I know Ed want the more sort of under, guys who aren't a big part of the team. So I would have kind of a different definition. Like, I think the most underrated Eagle is Josh Sweat, who's a really big part of the team. He made the Pro Bowl. And so everybody knows he's a good player, but I don't think everybody knows he's a really good player. Really good player. And I think from that standpoint, he's underrated. Ed went more, I think he went Jack Driscoll, number one, who's, a good player, six man, so to speak, on the offensive line, can play every position but center. So he's sort of got a different definition than me, but I think Josh Sweat is there with everybody we always talk about, obviously the quarterback and, A.J. Brown's, Devontae Smith's, Dallas Goedert's. Like, he's that kind of player. I don't think people look at him that way is why I put him in that category.
I like your pick. I like Ed's pick because, as I said, it all comes down to your own definition of what's underrated, starters, subs. Different people can interpret it differently. I give you the guy who I would say, even over Josh Sweat, who I think is a very good pick. I would say it's Avonte Maddox because you got your three corner, you got your two outside guys, decorated, Pro Bowl, getting paid big bucks. Avonte's in the slot. And oh, by the way, in today's NFL, slot means you're on the field about what? 85, 90% of the time. The slot corner does not come off the field very often in the NFL these days. Now, the thing working against Avonte is he does get hurt and he misses games. But that helps to make the point of the most underrated player because last year when he was off the field, that meant Josiah Scott was on the field. Do I have to remind you of 3rd and 30 conversion against the Dallas Cowboys? Ouch. That one stung. Because he's in the slot, because he's not on the outside facing off against the other team's best receiver. And, oh, by the way, that's one thing you'll see against the Eagles. They don't really force outside wide receivers into the slot. Some teams will do that they'll specifically pick on your slot corner if they think they get a better matchup and a guy can swing from outside to inside. They don't do that against Eagles. Why? Because Avonte Maddox is that good at covering in the slot corner. It's got to stay on the field this year, got to cut down on the injuries. But I would say Avonte Maddox, most underrated Philadelphia.
No, I think that's a good choice as well. I can't, he's a very good player. I think, as you pointed out, you're correct. You saw the difference when he was on the field, when he was off the field. I would add, too, that in this scheme and this philosophy that we always talk about, when we talk about we always talk about +1 on offense, the +1 on defense. That's the whole thought process of this scheme, to have the extra guy in coverage. And the most important part of all the coverage schemes is the slot corner, the nickelback. That's sort of the guy in obvious passing situations where everything is based off the coverage. So it's a really important position in this philosophy. Really important player. So, yeah, I mean, he'd be at the top of my list. I just think, Josh is a little bit better at his particular position. But Avonte's a very good player and a very important player. And what are the weird things about Avonte Maddox going all the way back to when he was a rookie and was forced to move to safety for a short term because of injuries? Everybody, well, why don't you put Avonte at safety? Why don't you put Avonte at safety when you have all these safety issues? Why the hell do you want to move him from slot corner? It makes no sense to me, but I get those almost every week. When we start talking about Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds and, could Sidney Brown, well, why not put Avonte Maddox? Because he's more important playing the slot. And it's a more important position in this particular defense as well, believe it or not, even though he's on the field a little bit less in the key situations, the known pass, as Jonathan Gannon used to call it. That slot corner is really an integral piece. So he's going to play slot cornerback, and hopefully he's healthy. And the good news is, because of the added depth outside, they were able to move Zach McPherson finally in the slot. So if the injuries do pop up, I think they'll be better equipped this year to handle it, because I think Zach is a better player than Josiah Scott, but would still be a significant drop-off.
Moving Avonte Maddox to slot kind of follows the Jeff Stoutland line of reasoning. Why would you put 2 question marks out there when you could only put 1? If you move Avonte, and I think he'd probably be okay at safety.
Yeah, he was forced to play it last year, and he played it well. When remember that little series when he came back and Chauncey was still hurt and Josiah was struggling, and so it became, what are we going to do at these particular positions? And they played him a little bit at safety, and he did play well. But when they were healthy, I mean, and everybody was out there, sometimes you have to do things with injuries. So, the people now, it's Nolan Smith. Well, why not put Nolan Smith at linebacker? No. Now, if you have to, you have to. When you get down to 53, if you have a couple injuries and you don't have players, then you might say, hey, you got to do it for a little while.
Right.
But no, not you're not, especially in the off season when you have 90 players. No, you're trying to get him up and you're trying to work on his technique and get him to be one of the best edge rushers in football long term. So that kind of stuff is short-term necessity thinking, and he's done it. And
Avonte to safety last year was because CJGJ was hurt. It wasn't like, let's try this. No, they got caught in a numbers game and they said, well, what's the best possible scenario short term that we can fix this right here, right now? And that was it. There's trying to plan for potential problems and then being faced with those problems on the fly in the middle of a game. They're two different things.
Yeah. And we're talking, it was one game, really. He played, I'm looking at his numbers, his snap counts. He played 23 snaps at safety. So it was really one game. And it played 408 in the slot. And then a couple extra box snaps and things like that. But he could, he's probably their best safety. If you put him back there today, he'd be their best safety, but he's more important as the slot corner. So
that doesn't say much about Mr. Edmonds, Mr. Blankenship. If you're going to say that he's their best safety playing slot corner, that's not what Eagle fans want to hear.
Well, I'm just saying but he's a really good player is what I'm saying. So if you put him back there, if you had to put him back there, he'd do well. But yeah, he's more important at slot corner. And
I saw this stat somewhere today, and I'd give credit to who came up with it. Might have been Dave Zingauer and NBC Sports Philly. You mentioned that the Eagles should be better at slot corner this year if Avonte Maddox, I almost moved to say when Avonte Maddox gets hurt. Sorry, Avonte, truth's the truth. You've had injuries every year you've been here in Philadelphia. Hopefully none and or very little amount of time spent on the sideline. You said that they've kind of committed to making Zach Mack a slot corner. That last year they had him more on the outside, didn't need him because Slay and Bradbury stayed as healthy as they did and thought Josiah Scott was the better option at replacing him. But they're training up Zach Mack at slot corner this year. You know how many snaps Zach Mack got at slot corner last year?
I would guess 0. I'd have to look it up. I mean,
close but incorrect.
If he did move in, it was probably because of motion on the other side. Just sort of not the way the Eagles play.
The answer, I'll give you the answer. The answer would be 1. Out of 250 snaps played last year, McPherson was on defense for 250 snaps. 1 was played at slot corner. That's not a lot of experience, Johnny Mac. 1 out of 250. So they've got all off season to work it out. But then again, the Eagles don't work out much during the off season. What makes them think that McPherson can be just a plug and play guy? Now, this is as a backup. We're not talking about as a starter. And hopefully Avonte Maddox stays healthy and Zach Mack does a great job rooting him on from the sidelines again. But if that injury reoccurs and Zach Mack is thrown in there, what makes him think that he'll just adapt to that position?
It's what you do. You evaluate players and you project players. I've been saying for years he looks like a slot corner to me. When they drafted him.
All right, so hold on. Define looks like to me.
Well, they're different positions. I think, I talk all the time about, off-ball linebacker, Sam linebackers, even more egregious when people lump that in as linebackers. It's similarly Hassan Reddick, versus TJ Edwards. Technically, they play the same position. Fans, not technically, they don't play the same position. But I'm saying when you see the term linebacker next to both of their names, there's a bunch of fans. There's a lot of smart fans who understand the game that know they play different positions. But it's why you have this Nolan Smith narrative. Well, why can't he play linebacker? He's announced as a linebacker. They're two completely different positions. All-ball linebacker, Sam linebacker, edge rusher. Completely different positions. Not to that extent, but those are two completely different positions, outside corner, slot corner. And you need different traits to play in the slot, play outside. Inside the slot corner, They have a lot more responsibility when it comes to run support. So they got to hold up in that aspect of the game. Outside corners tend to be not very good run support, to put it mildly, especially in the modern era. They tend to be longer. They tend to be faster. They need to match up outside with the A.J. Browns of the world, who play mainly outside the numbers, receivers like that, the Mike Evanses of the world, if you think about those guys. So they tend to be longer. They tend to be faster. Inside, you need to deal with the sort of option routes. So you got to be very smart. You got to be very savvy. You have to understand a little bit more about the entire defense. When I mentioned the importance of the position that they always stress, especially in this philosophy when they play so much match zone, you got to have a better understanding of the linebackers coverage because you're in the mix with them in the middle of the field. You have all these option routes, as I mentioned. You think about the Julian Edelmans, the Wes Welkers, those types of players, Cooper Kupp in the slot, Justin Jefferson in the slot. I mean, they'll kill you with these option routes. And it's different. And that's why when people say, well, just put Slay, travel. Well, you're traveling from side to side, but you're not going to put them in the slot much.
Right.
They're different positions. And
okay. You did a great job explaining the difference between being in the slot and being outside. Maybe I didn't state the question well. What is it about Zach McPherson that you say he's better suited for the slot? Him personally, his traits, what he brings to the field. Why do you think it would work in the slot when we've seen him take exactly one snap out of 250 snaps?
Well, number one, it starts with his physical traits. He's they list him at 5'11". That might be a little bit generous. I don't know, but he's from. If you look at Abonte's 5'9".
Yeah, he's not big at all.
When you're under 6 feet, and not, because there's a lot of guys like the kid in Seattle's like 6'4", which is ridiculous, but you got to have length to play outside for the most part. So you start with the physical traits, and that's why I said he looks like a slot cornerback to me. That's what I'm talking about. From a physical perspective, it's pretty clear the Eagles agreed. They just couldn't move him inside because they didn't have any backup outside corners. Now look at who they drafted. Calais Ringo. Fast, long, length, outside corner. They signed Greedy Williams, former second-round pick, 6'2", long, very fast, outside corner. Now they can move Zach McPherson in. It's not to do with what he's played. It's got to do with his physical traits. Is he going to live up to Avonte Maddox? No. Is he better than Josiah Scott, who, by the way, Josiah Scott has the exact same measurements of Avonte Maddox? It's about the physical traits of the player. And to me, Zach McPherson has always, since day one that I saw him, has always looked like a slot corner to me.
He's going to get a chance to be the backup slot corner this year, and we'll see if he can get the job done better than Josiah Scott last year. Yeah, I think he's got a pretty good chance to accomplish that. Mac guys here on Birds 365. Got two good guests coming your way. The first of which is going to join us coming up in a couple of minutes. If you have had your JAKIB Media YouTube channel on today, you know who's coming up next. He's here before us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. But every once in a while, we get him on and grill him. Make sure he's staying up with his Eagle knowledge. That would be one Mark Farzetta of the Farzy Show and Eagles pregame show here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. He joins us next on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Football Friday here on Birds 365. You got McMullen and McDonald, and we are joined by one Mark Farzetta from the Farzy Studios. How's your summer going, Farzy?
It was going great up until yesterday, where I participated. I didn't get it. I didn't talk football yesterday. I played football yesterday.
Yeah, man. You don't have the ego of Kincaid, so Kincaid's posting its highlights. I didn't see any Farzetta highlights.
That's because I had to go back. Kevin Kincaid was on my team yesterday. Love Kevin. He's a great dude. Does great work over at Krause and all that. But, man, he was definitely showing me up yesterday. He had a couple touchdowns for us yesterday. I did, admittedly so, post a touchdown pass from 4 years ago that I threw to my man Crockett, radio personality Crockett. And I will just say this. 4 years ago, I wasn't really sore. This year, I am really sore.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That bubble's brutal, man.
Oh, yeah.
The difference between the turf and the grass, man, it's real. It's real.
Yeah, it was great though. I was representing Team Chop, so we were all about the kids. Man, we were all about the children yesterday. I wish I could have given them a better performance, but it was a rough day. It was a rough day for Team Chop.
The cannon didn't get to show off. Mark the Cannon Farzetta. Yeah,
I'll tell you this. Dave, who does a great job of doing all the PR and marketing for NRG, really loves this flag football game. He goes all out. He gives nicknames to players and all that stuff. And on my scouting report, they called me the Cannon because of that throw I made a couple of years ago. I didn't get a chance to really show off the Cannon this year. It was definitely not the Cannon. It was more like the pistol.
That bubble.
That bubble. You as the quarterback.
Yeah.
We had a 10-year NRG veteran who I will not out, but he took over a lot of the responsibilities of play calling, coaching for the most part. AJ Feely was our coach. He was our coach. Nice. But it was good to see him. Good to catch up with him. But we had a gentleman kind of run the show for us yesterday. So I was a mere cog in the wheel. I was just there to help the ball club in any way that I could. Team guy.
Somehow as a cog, you came up painful today. I guess they ripped those flags out a little too harshly.
Oh, it was vicious. It was vicious, man. Yeah, really aggressive.
But good on you for getting out and raising some money for a very good cause.
Sure.
All right, ran this by Johnny Mack, first segment, and if you haven't given us any thought, take a second if you just want to come up with a name. Who's the most underrated player on the Philadelphia Eagles going into the 2023 season?
Ooh, I love underrated player. If I got to go underrated, I got to go with Reed Blankenship because I think Reed Blankenship is going to show you that he's not going to be an all-pro safety. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think you are actually going to step up in that position slightly from what you saw last year. I think Reed Blankenship showed you a lot in his rookie campaign.
Wow.
And Johnny Mack, I know you and I have talked about this before about how, the MO on him for a lot of people, myself included, for a time before you educated me on the situation. Reed Blankenship went into that third preseason game, and that's why you watch the third preseason game. You want to see who really steps up and really solidifies their spot on the roster. And he absolutely did that. You thought he was a little bit more in the coach's favor than I did going into that game, but I thought he absolutely, it was the stone cold lock that he was going to make the roster out of that game. And not only did he make the roster, but he immediately puts Aaron Rodgers in his book. He picks him up. He comes up with a couple of big hits on Saquon Barkley in the Giants games, including the playoffs. And he went from, in my mind last year, the term serviceable is how you rate a guy that isn't going to hurt you. I think you're going to see him help you a lot more from the strong safety position, if you even want to call it a strong safety position, than what you were able to get last year, for instance. I think you're going to have a step up from Marcus Epps. I think Reed Blankenship is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder because I don't think many people look at him and say, oh, he's going to be more than serviceable. He's going to be he's going to be a good, strong safety for you coming into this season.
So if you got Reed locked in, which he very well might be, Mark, and you want to get Sidney Brown on the field, Terrell Edmonds outs?
Yeah, on the outs, you mean? Yeah, I think it's
you're only
possible.
paying him $600,000 guaranteed. Mm-hmm. It's one of those deals. Last year was Jaquiski Tart, right? Jaquiski Tart. He started for the 49ers. Good player, recognizable name, solid on a good defense. Jody and I have talked about this a bunch. We have fans here saying, oh, you got to have Tart. He's the best safety on the field.
Best safety on the team.
Yeah. Now, coaching staff, he didn't get off the ground with the coaching staff. He didn't get off the freaking third team. Edmonds is already on the first team. It's only OTAs, but he's already impressed the coaching staff more. So I don't want to make that comparison. But, are you going to keep him as a backup if he's not the starter? It's like Anthony Harris is the better comp. Like Anthony Harris was going to be the starting safety right up until August 30th when they traded to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And then he was out because he wasn't going to be a backup. Doesn't play special teams, all that kind of stuff. Same thing with Edmonds. If he doesn't win that starting job, is he going to be here?
Yeah. The interesting thing with this year is that you already know you're having a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience in Reed Blankenship as one of your starting safeties. So they might want to go the route of a little bit more experience if they do decide to have a guy like Edmonds take over.
Yeah.
That's why I thought you were saying it was going to be more a lock in the other direction. Not that he's on the outs, but that he might be a starter.
Oh, I think he's going to be a starter.
Okay. I agree.
I think he's going to be a starter.
But Sidney Brown, though, the interesting thing there is that if he just blows you away in training camp, if he really goes out there and shows you that he's worthy of that safety position, you might say, well, hell with experience, I'm just going to go with who's better. And he might be the guy that ends up winning that spot. And don't get me wrong, I think the Eagles, and I think every Eagles fan also, when you take a draft pick like that for a starting safety, you want somebody to come in and be a starter for you. Sidney Brown could be that guy where he justifies the pick immediately and becomes a starting safety. Now, it's not a first-round pick, obviously, so it's not the same type of stock, but it's still a young player with a good experience in college, obviously, that could come out here and turn a lot of heads in training camp. And if he does that, yes, you're going to have an inexperienced secondary, but you're going to have a secondary that can, I think, flat-out ball. And if they could do that, then, they might lean in the direction of going with the younger secondary as opposed to going with a more seasoned veteran, if you will.
Yeah, I think the guy who's in trouble is Justin Evans. He was in the mix until they drafted Sidney Brown. Now I think he's on the outside looking in. But
what about Kayvon Wallace?
Man, what was the point? Oh, well, you were making earlier about moving Devontae Maddox to safety. Kayvon Wallace was there the whole time. And they said, like, yeah, we don't really want to put Kayvon on the field. So unless he has a killer camp, is he going to spend another year on the practice squad, guy? Can they drop him down on the practice
Well,
squad?
you can put veterans on the practice squad. That's not an issue anymore since they changed the rules. But, he's been a big part of the team, special teams wise. Once again, everybody, and they weren't great on special teams. So the last thing you want to do,
I think we can get Farzy out there on special teams if we can get him toughened up a little bit where he's not sore after the game. Then we get him out there making tackles on
quarterbacks don't play special teams. I mean, you can't put the cannon on special teams.
Yeah, man, you can't sacrifice.
I think we determined he's not the cannon anymore. That's why I'm telling you, Farzetta, get down there, cover that punt.
Yeah, special teams. Hey, whatever helps the ball club, and good Lord willing, things will work out. You know what I'm saying?
Out of you.
No, but just to go back to Kayvon Wallace for a second, the biggest knock against Kayvon Wallace is Reed Blankenship. Like the fact that he was getting the reps and he was getting the starter time and all that stuff, and it wasn't Kayvon Wallace. I think like a lot of people, they were, if not secretly, they were outwardly open, wanting Kayvon Wallace to be the guy because he had a relationship with Brian Dawkins.
No, it's a safety from Clemson.
Exactly. Oh, his roommates with Doc's son and all that. So like you had that connection that you would hopefully see. Oh, well, he's got the Dawkins connection there. You want to see him as a strong, you want the free safety or safety for this team, and then you see other guys go up and pass him, and it's just not there.
I believe there's like 12 or 13 safeties in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And people are going, oh, he roomed with his son, so maybe he's going to be number 14.
Yeah. How many pizzas did they share? Pizzas did they share? So that means he's got some of that Doc gene in him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That is a very tough one.
Mm-hmm.
But, Reed impressed the coaching staff. The day the pads went on, that's when they said, whoa.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he was a 5-year starter in college, which, sometimes they hold it against you.
Yeah, usually that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Right. So it's that sort of line between he knows how to play versus he might be a little bit too old, a little bit too much tread off the tire. But boy, it worked out short term because he was their best rookie last year. He was their best rookie. I mean, Jordan played well, and he was playing well until he got hurt, and then he sort of was on the back burner. Cam didn't play. Jacoby didn't play. Reed Blankenship was their best rookie last year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair statement. The other thing that I can look at with him is that, I mean, look, it was 1 year. He wasn't the starter the entire season, but it was a good amount of it. The things I mentioned, the hits on Saquon Barkley, the pick of Aaron Rodgers is great. But what I look for in every rookie, especially one that's like an undrafted guy, for instance, is you just want to look at a guy and see that he belongs. And he did that tenfold last year in everything that he did. And yeah, you put the pads on, and that's when he's most comfortable, when he's able to play fast and physical. And if you're a safety in the NFL, that's when you should be most comfortable, is when you can actually hit people. And I remember the same thing, John, that you're referencing when you talk about what Nick Sirianni said about him last year. And I think it was after the pick on Aaron Rodgers, after that Green Bay game, he came out and said all the stuff about 5-year starter, about how all the coaches in college said, yeah, no, hold on a second. I know that that's usually a knock on somebody, Jody, just like you were saying, but this is a guy that we wanted to keep around. This is a guy that wanted to be around, and he wanted to make sure that he got everything he could out of his college experience. And then when he had the opportunity at the NFL level to capitalize on that and show that what he could really do, oh, man, he did that. He looked more than comfortable on the field. He looked like a guy that belonged. He looked like a guy. I was talking about the experience knock on that secondary, on that safety position. This looks like a guy who plays like he's been around the NFL for 5 years as opposed to 5 years in college.
Fuzzy, need your take on something that John and I have been batting back and forth ever since the Eagles had their activities, not practice, activities.
Yeah, social gatherings.
Activity. Yeah. Yes. And they get guys out there for certain drills in certain orders in certain positions that you try and read between the lines with. Starting right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. Oof. we know that Cam Jurgens is someone that they think highly of. He backed up Kelsey all last year, which means he doesn't get on the field because Kelsey never leaves the field. But it's got the abilities and some traits that make you believe he could play right guard. But then what happens if Kelsey gets hurt? Do you just throw him back there? Do you throw a lesser choice for backup center? It might depend on whether it's just a one play in the game or it's going to be a couple of games. Tyler Steen, high draft pick this year, but not a guard. And he's learning the position is new. And Jeff Stoutland, the guy who's going to make the decision, we know his overall opinions on how you best build an offensive line. Who's going to be the starting right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Cam Jurgens is going to be the starting right guard. However, I thought it was really interesting, and I don't know who it was that asked the question, but they asked Lane Johnson during his press conference when he was talking about how the abductor is good to go and he's healthy and everything. And then, hey, starting right guard, what are you looking for? The question was a very general, what are you looking for in a right guard? And I thought that's when he was going to take the opportunity to start just saying glowing things about Cam Jurgens. And he started off by saying, yeah, both these guys really, handle the position well. And I'm like, say what now? Both these guys? What do you mean both these guys? And then I remembered, of course, Steen is here, but I didn't think he'd even be in consideration for the role until maybe a couple of years down the line when you do see, or next year if Jason Kelsey's not here and you do have Cam Jurgens as your center of the future. But he was like, both these guys come in here and they've learned the position well. They've done a great job. They're incredibly strong. Obviously, the Eagles introduced the left tackle of Tyler Steen as a guard during the draft, which is interesting. But he said glowing things about both these guys. And I was like, hold on a second. They're not going to have – hold on. Like you just asked me, Jody, who's the starting right guard? It's Cam Jurgens. But is there actually going to be more of a competition here than we really thought between these two players for the right guard position? Cam Jurgens is going to be the right guard. But the fact that the team is talking about it in a different light, Nick Sirianni talked about it in a different light when he addressed the media at the close of the social gatherings that were the OTAs. But when you look at it from a Jeff Stoutland position, if you look at it from even a Lane Johnson position, you want to make sure that these young guys, whether they be a second-year player like Cam Jurgens or a rookie like Tyler Steen, they're looking at it as if it's a competition. Nothing is guaranteed in the NFL, as we all know. Those two are going to have to battle it out for the position. But again, I believe it'll be Cam Jurgens being the starting right guard for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it was Baldy who was talking to Lane, and Lane said, he'd like a bigger guy at guard. Lane loved Brandon Brooks. Yeah. Obviously. Well, we all did, but great player when he was healthy. And he was huge. I mean, yeah, Brandon played at like 350. And then Isaac, not as huge. Too often fans look at the roster, they don't always tell the truth. So I think Isaac was listed at 305 pounds, and Cam, I'm looking for Cam right now. They list Cam at 303. All right. They ain't the same size. I don't know, if Isaac is legit 305 and Cam's 285, they're not close to being the same size. But when that comes into it, I think it's a bigger deal for Kelsey than Lane, because Kelsey's undersized as a center, and they've always protected him with these big bodies inside. Landon, even more so on the other side. Landon's like 340.
Yeah. He's a big boy.
Yeah. So to me, it's more important to protect Kelsey with that size. But if you're good, you're good. Cam Jurgens was talking about it. He's not going to be Brandon Brooks, right? He's got to play a different way, but he's tremendously athletic. Maybe they can play a different way. But either way, they're going to be fine. That's how I look at it.
I think the same way. And I don't know if that's us being spoiled by Jeff Stoutland's success as the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. I don't know if that's because you got a Hall of Fame center in Jason Kelsey and a guy who hasn't allowed a sack since the Stone Age in Lane Johnson. We've been spoiled. As far as the offensive line goes, they've been great. They took a guy who was a rugby player out of Australia. Now all of a sudden he's your starting left tackle, taking over for Jason Peters, and they haven't missed a beat in that regard. You could go back and talk about all the guys on the roster that they've had at the offensive line position and had success with. Halapulavati Vaitai winning a Super Bowl with him at left tackle. I have confidence in the system. I have confidence in the guy now picking the players to go into that system and Howie Roseman, and then he's handing them to a guy that can handle it better than anybody in the NFL, and Jeff Stoutland. So it's like going into this, if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on Cam Jurgens, but I don't feel like you lose big on a bet if it ends up being Tyler Steen, because this is being very much evaluated by a very good coaching staff and being evaluated by very good talent evaluators in the front office. Whereas one of those things like, I think it's going to be Cam Jurgens, and I hope it is. He's going to be the second-year player, have a chance to make his mark on the NFL, get his feet wet for when he does slide slightly over to his left and take over as the center. But if they decide to go Steen, then that means he really blew people away there in training camp.
And by the way, if you got to go all the way down to the contingency, say Cam can't play right guard, right? The worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler's not ready to make the transition. You just put Jack Driscoll in there. You're fine. You're still fine.
Mm-hmm.
You're still fine. It might screw up a little bit of the game day backup situation, but Jeff doesn't like moving pieces around. Maybe he'd have to in that type of situation. But man, I mean, there's a lot of insurance policies. That's what the Eagles are good at. Contingencies.
And here's the thing that I'll say about the offensive line coach, and he's in a different position than some of the other coaches on Eagles staff, specifically last year. I was critical of both Gannon and Nick Rallis that they couldn't get Nakobe Dean some reps last year in the games where the Eagles were up by 2 touchdowns. Really, Kaiser White and Edwards had to stay on the field for basically every single snap. I get it. You're in the moment. You want to win the game. You're undefeated at 8-0. Blah, blah, blah. Whole thing the way that the year laid out last year. But I think it's every coach's responsibility to look to the future. Not only this game today, but the next month, the next year, 2 years down the line. Stoutland doesn't have to do that. Offensive linemen, that's not the case. You're not moving guys in and out. Linebackers, you can move a linebacker in and out. You can sub out a linebacker. Offensive linemen don't sub out. They stay in. When you're in, you're in. When you're out, you're out. You only get in when a guy gets hurt. So I don't think that he'll look at it that way, but I can here on Birds 365. I think they're rooting for Steen to win the job, because that way they can keep Jurgens just as a backup center and not have to worry about it. No, he's the guy. And then what happens when he moves over to right guard? He's pretty damn good. And then Kelsey says at the end of the year, see ya, I'm out of here. Well, now what do you do at center? No, you'd rather have the guy right there. Now, Steen's got to earn it. If he's not good enough, if Jurgens is just flat out better, then, of course, Jurgens is going to be the guy. But if they're even, Johnny Mack and Mark Farzetta, if they're dead even, and Stoutland's being honest with himself, they both did the job to the same exact level, who do you think they start?
If I'm going first, Jody, I'll say that's a really interesting way to phrase that question.
Yeah,
that's an experienced interviewer phrasing that question. I think you're right. I think they go Steen. If it's dead even, and you have an opportunity to not change the position of the guy that you think is going to be your center for the next decade in the NFL, then I'm going to keep him in that position and not have him worry about moving around on the offensive line. I will say that I think it's interesting that some of the players have come out and talked about Cam Jurgens committing to versatility. And throughout walkthroughs, he always wanted to get reps at the right guard spot or at the guard's spot, just to be more familiar with those spots in case he was called upon to come off the bench and be a starter at either guard position. So he's got a dedication to the versatility already, but that's just a guy who wants to get on the football field. If you want to make sure that he's picking up everything he can at the center position, then yeah, you hold him back. But it also depends on whether or not they look at Steen as a guy that can not only be the starting right guard for this year, but obviously for the future as well.
Yeah.
And then they'll also look at it in another way, thinking about it like this, whether or not they just want to make sure Cam Jurgens can go out there and hit men, not college guys, but get the experience of hitting NFL defensive linemen and making sure he's picking up blitzes from linebackers or safeties, whoever's coming through, and just get that type of experience while he's right next to Lane Johnson. Or excuse me, not necessarily Lane Johnson, but more so Jason Kelsey.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that scenario that Jody laid out, yeah, dead even, yeah, I go with Tyler Steen, because long term, that's the goal. Long term, it's going to be Jurgens at center, Tyler Steen at right guard. That's the plan. And if it's dead even, you might. I don't get this thought process of, oh, Cam was the 51st pick last year, so he's got to get on the field. No, he doesn't. No, who cares? He was drafted to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelce. Now he's the third one. Isaac was drafted to be the heir apparent. Landon was drafted to be the heir apparent. And Jason keeps going and going and going and going. But I think we now know, all right, it's really close to the end. Last year he said he was going to retire. He told Lane he was going to retire. And they were so successful. He had so much fun. They don't have him practice. That helps. He said if this were Doug, he'd be gone already because the practices were tougher. So we're closer to the end, and Cam's going to be the center. He's going to be the center. So long term, dead even, but dead even. How can that even happen, though? Right. I'll say that. So somebody's going to win the job. But I do think if we're dead even, yeah, you might as well get it started. Tyler Steen's drafted to be the right guard. Let him play right guard. Ultimately, when Lane retires, I think you're going to try to replace him with a, first round pick. That's what they're going to try to replace him with. Tyler Steen, some people have said, well, maybe he'll be the right tackle. Well, the reason they announced him as a guard, Mark, his arms are too small to play tackle. That's why they project him inside. Now, people can roll their eyes and say that's goofy, but that's the way the NFL thinks. So if long-term your plan is to have Cam Jurgens at center, Tyler Steen at right guard, and Tyler Steen proves he can play the position at the same level as Cam Jurgens, yeah, I'm Tyler Steen all day. It makes too much sense.
All right, quickie trivia quiz for both you two guys. What team in the National Football League led the league in penalties on their offensive line last year?
Oh, the Eagles.
Eagles were number one in penalties on the offensive line.
Really? Number 41?
Yeah.
Wow.
41 offensive line penalties, more than any
other. And by
other
the way,
team.
they could have had 81 if they called Lane's false starts, but reputation is part of it.
That is one of the most amazing things, Lane Johnson. If you play it at regular speed, you don't see it. If you play it at half speed, you don't see it. If you play it at like 1/4 speed, you go, shoot, did he jump? Did he get off before they snapped the ball? You have to slow it down so much to see. He is so good at reading that at the exact split second they snap the ball. He does get that little bit of an edge every single time, but and they never call it on him. Is that nitpicking to go, hey, you got to clean that up? Lead the league in offensive line penalties? What's wrong with this offensive line? Well, they're the best offensive line in football, but they do take the most penalties. Is that something Stoutland should be working on? And should we have fear of it this year because they're plugging in a new guy at right guard, whoever he may be?
I mean, I think so. I knew the Eagles were up there. I thought top 5. I didn't think number 1.
Tied for first.
Tied for who was the other team?
I think.
Do you have it in front of you?
I forget.
All right, no, whatever. So
two teams at 41 specific offensive line penalties last year.
All right, first off, the Lane Johnson thing, let me just say this. I think that's really happening a lot throughout the league where they're looking at those experienced tackles like Lane Johnson, for instance.
My God.
They're old veteran pitchers in baseball that are getting the corners, and it's not on the corner. They're getting those calls, if you will. But if I'm Jeff Stoutland, absolutely. I mean, what's your job? Your job is to make sure that you make life as easy as possible for the offense to move down the field, not move backwards on the field. And when you get called for those penalties, not only are they moving you back on the field, but they couldn't negate a play on the other side of the field the penalty had nothing to do with. So that, to me, is something you have to work on because you can't shoot yourselves in the foot. And when you look at games that the Eagles struggled a little bit in last year, and obviously there weren't a lot of them, but when they did struggle, you saw the penalties. You saw the moments where it was either a penalty or it was something else that would shoot you in the foot, a turnover, a drop pass, whatever it might be. So eliminate those opportunities where the defense is going to have success, and that will make the offense more successful. So imagine that. You called for the most penalties in the NFL on your offensive line, what we all talk about here. I knew they had a struggle-filled season, but as far as the penalties went, I think it was number 1. But think about it like this. You just can't make it more difficult for your offense to advance the football. And if that's what you're thinking is Jeff Stoutland, then that's something you are definitely working on in this offseason.
I always tell the story. Jody might recognize the name. Tim Irwin. You're probably a little bit too young, Mark.
I know the name.
Long-time starter, about 15 years in the league. Really good player. Became an agent, became a judge. Really interesting guy, but lawyer, obviously. He was the Vikings starting right tackle for years. He gave Reggie White fits. You know why he gave Reggie White fits? They let him tackle Reggie White. They let him do anything because he was around so long and he had the reputation. And then he finally retired, and they brought in Corey Stringer, which is another story, very sad story, but tremendous player early in his career, developed into, maybe the best right tackle in football before the tragedy. And he couldn't block Reggie. Because they wouldn't give him the tricks of the trade. He was a young player. He had to earn it.
You got to earn it.
And Tim would just, Reggie would hate playing him because he would maul him and he'd get away with it. It was unbelievable.
One of the things people always talk about with John Runyon, and you just reminded me of this.
Runyon would always, similar player, by the way. Very similar player to John Runyon.
Exactly. And John would always get called as like the cheater, or, he would, find ways to, manipulate the game or whatever. Well, when you ask John about it, Ronnie would always talk about how it's like, it's not cheating. It's not cheap shots. It's being a veteran and understanding the game and knowing what you can get away with. And to me, that's gamesmanship. That's part of it. It also kind of says exactly what everybody else says, but in a different way, but like a politician. But it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going up against guys that are most likely going to beat you. Find a way to manipulate the game or the rules in your favor, knowing what you can get away with.
Yeah.
All right. Farzy, last thing before we let you run, and it's a favor. It's not a question. You putting in the good work yesterday, charitable time down at the Bubble. Unfortunately, they didn't use the cannon. That's their mistake. But know that you've got this kind of relationship now with Jeff Lurie. I need you to ask him for me. I want to see the Eagles on Hard Knocks this year. We're into mid-June now, and they still haven't named the Hard Knocks team. Usually they name it in March. We're in friggin' mid-June, and they haven't picked the Hard Knocks team out yet. The Eagles can't be forced to do it because they've got certain rules and regulations here. If you want to get out of it, here's a get-out-of-jail-free card. There's only 4 teams that don't have that get-out-of-jail-free card this year. The Jets, the Saints, and 2 more. I can't remember who that. Bears and somebody. Commanders. And that's who I think it might be if they get that sale done next week and Joshua Harris takes over. But Jeff Lurie could trump them all. He could get Goodell on the phone and go, Raj, we'll volunteer to do it this year. I'd love to see this team on Hard Knocks. The personalities, Jalen Hurts, everything. Let the nation see Jalen Hurts. You got the owner's ear. Just go to Mr. Lurie and go, you know what? Be a guy. Give the Eagle fans something more to sink their teeth into this year. Let's put them on Hard Knocks. Can you do that for me?
I will. I'll make some phone calls. He's texting me, but it's so much. I just like, hey, I don't like getting back to him.
Put him. Yeah, you gotta mute him.
Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes, there, Jeff. You know what I'm saying? But as far as your enthusiasm, Jody, for having them on Art, I would love to see them on Hard.
Yes.
What Eagles? Anybody that says, I don't want them to have the distraction. You don't want them to have. You don't want to have that sort of inside access. When they did the All Access that Prime
Amazon.
Did? Yeah. Amazon.
All or nothing.
All or nothing. Thank you.
That's not as good as Hard Knocks.
No, I 1,000% agree. I 1,000% agree, Jody. But it's as close as they have come to Hard Knocks, and I would love to see them featured on something like that. I want to see Nick Sirianni behind the scenes. I want to see some of the stories play out that players have told us about, what a player's coach he is. I want to see Jeff Stoutland behind the scenes. Like I'm forgetting his name now, but he was the offensive line coach for the Browns. But I know he exists.
The big.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I know he exists because of Hard Knocks. Okay. I want to see the personalities behind the scenes. I want to see Jalen Hurts, as you were saying, Joe, behind the scenes. I want to see the relationship more between him and A.J. Brown. I want to see guys developing. I want to see how this running back room is going to come together. I want to see Jason. You mean to tell me you wouldn't want to see Jason Kelce coaching up Cam Jurgens? You mean to tell me you wouldn't want to see that? Yeah. Everyone wants to see that. I'm all for it. I love Hard Knocks. Maybe I'll get back to Jeffrey and I'll say let's do it.
Take him off mute. Just a quickie before we get out of here. John, what's the chance of that happening?
0.
Yeah,
Can I go negative 0?
Yeah.
It's not even 0.0004.
If I could go negative, I would.
If Sirianni has anything to say about it, it's a flat 0.
Yeah.
It's got
He's
no
coming back from Florida.
But Jeffrey's the boss. That's why I'm telling you got to go to Jeffrey. Because if there's anybody who can tell, suck it up, get it done, coach, let the cameras in, it's his boss, and that would be Jeff Floyd. So
By the way,
I got
Bob,
faith in you, Farzi. You're going to make Farzi's going to make this happen.
Yeah. Let me just say this real quick on a behind-the-scenes thing. I'm going to guess that a lot of people here are not soccer fans, like football fans, right? Like overseas, like EPL and stuff. Welcome to Wrexham with Philly native Rob McMullen of Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
There's an interview with Rob McMullen at the link with Jeffrey Lurie where they talk about being owners.
Yeah.
And I forget what episode it is, but if you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. I've seen every episode. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic show. But it was a really interesting thing going, from Rob McElhenney's point of view, from a fan to now being an owner of a team and then sitting with the guy that owns your favorite football team, American football. It's an amazing, it's a really incredible thing. And I think it's a good look behind the scenes, at least Jeffrey Lurie and his mentality of being an owner.
All right. If you drop the ball, Farzi, we'll get the guy from Wrexham on and get him.
The guy from Wrexham. Yes.
Guy from Wrexham.
Yeah. He's sorry, not a soccer guy.
Bob Wiley, by the way, Farzetta, is the offensive line coach you're talking about.
You know what you want to be? You know what you want to be as an offensive? You want to be a gorilla. You don't want to be a rhino. You want to be a gorilla. And hey, that speaks to the arms. That speaks to the arms you're talking about there with Steve.
Yeah.
You can catch his show every morning before us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, The Farzi Show.
And the Phillies postgame show. 500, baby.
500, over 500. I'll be back tonight after the 9:40 start time against the Athletics tonight. Hopefully the Phillies keep it going in Oakland before they move to Vegas.
That is Mark Farzetta here with us on Birds 365. Thanks, Farz.
See you guys. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark Farzetta. All right, Mac coming back. Hour number 2. We have the guy. Farzetta's gone, right? He's gone now. The cannon is gone. The guy.
We got the MVP of the NRG charity
star of yesterday's charity game underneath the bubble down there.
And also a soccer guy. A lot of soccer talk today.
How did I get sucked into soccer talk?
Wrexham, baby. Wrexham.
Not exactly sure how that happened, but Mac coming back. Hour number 2 coming your way.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're Mac and Mac here on Birds 365 on a football Friday, a summertime football Friday, which means nothing's actually happening. Didn't happen up in New England yesterday, Johnny Mac. DeAndre Hopkins first visited the Titans. An overused phrase, they let him get out of town. I always laugh when somebody says, what are you going to do? Handcuff him to a radiator or something?
Can't let him out of the building, Jody. Can't let him out of the building.
Maybe I take that too literally, but I get the what the phrase is supposed to mean. Well, the Titans let him out of the building, and apparently the Patriots let him out of the building yesterday, but he had good visits up there. Let me once again.
You know what that means, Joe? He didn't get the money he was looking for, and he keeps waiting.
Yeah,
that's what that means.
I said this from the day that he got released with the Cardinals, and certain Eagle fans started beating the drum for DeAndre Hopkins to come here to Philadelphia. John said earlier the chance of the Eagles volunteering for Hard Knocks is 0. I won't go to 0 for Hopkins landing with the Eagles. I'll only go to 0.07. That's the chance that he signs it. It's not stone cold 0, but it's damn close to it for the reasons that we've given before. The fact that he's not going to be happy with being the 4th choice on the offense behind Smitty and AJ and Dallas at tight end to get balls thrown his way. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't add up. But the main reason, again, is, and I think people underestimate this, he's going to go where he's going to get paid. The team that offers him the biggest, and I'm sure he'd love to get a 3-year deal with a massive amount of money. At this stage of the year, even though I still think he's one of the more talented receivers in the league, it's not happening. And he's got to come to grips with that. He and his agent, they're not getting a multi-year deal. It's not happening. But he's going to go with the team that's going to give him the most money for 1 year this year. He's not a ring chaser. He's a dollar chaser. He's going to go with the team that gives him the most money, and that's not going to be the Philadelphia Eagles, because you are looking at him. There are teams out there that he signs with them tomorrow. He's wide receiver 1. If he comes here to Philadelphia right now, he's wide receiver 3. How much do you think Howie Roseman's going to pay wide receiver 3? Not happening. But there are teams that will pay him, because maybe not what he wants, because he thinks he's not only wide receiver 1, he's wide receiver top 10 in the league. He might not be that anymore, and nobody's going to give him that kind of money at this stage of an off season. But somebody's going to give him a hell of a lot more than the Eagles are, right, John?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question about it. And Eagles fans should cross their fingers that, what number did you put it at, Jody?
0.07.
Yeah. They should hope that doesn't come to fruition, because if it does, the window that you left slightly ajar, that comes to fruition if AJ Brown gets hurt working out on his own. If Devontae Smith gets hurt, then it becomes a real possibility, but only for that distinct reason. And then the Eagles think about paying him as well, because then he becomes wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2.
Right.
And that's a different conversation. As a wide receiver 3, I'm going to be bold and put it down to 0%. Ain't happening. Ain't happening.
Right. But there is still time before the season starts where worst case scenario that you just laid out, Smitty and or AJ get hurt and going to be out for months. Yes, then that would change the equation for the Eagles.
Yes.
How about at running back? Do the Eagles have a running? If they look at Rashad Penny as a major contributor this year, they traded for DeAndre Swift. If he were to get hit walking across Girard Avenue tomorrow, if the Eagles were to lose one of their running backs, they don't have as structured a grouping as they do at wide receiver. It's kind of all catch-all. There's no RB1, RB2, RB3, RB. Kind of like all the RBs together. Would an injury to one of those guys make the Eagles think about adding a top flight running back like the ex-Minnesota Viking?
No. I mean, Dalvin Cook is, and even if you think he's still got a lot of juice and he's still a top 5 back or whatever you want to describe it. Some people do, some people don't. But if you're in the camp they're just not in that position. I mean, they'll pay wide receiver. If they need a wide receiver, they'll pay for a wide receiver. They're not paying for a running back. And Tom Pelissero, who lives in the Minneapolis area, is very close to Cook, says he wants to be paid close to what he was scheduled to be paid in Minnesota. That's over $10 million. I don't know if he's getting that. I know he's not getting it from Philadelphia. Now, if it comes down to $5 million, I still don't think they're paying it. And, we talk about the chasm, between A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins, or between Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll, some pretty significant drop-offs. The drop-off from DeAndre Swift, if you want to put him as running back 1, to Rashad Penny, to Kenny Gainwell, to Boston Scott, is not that dramatic. They'd be very happy just saying, all right.
Next man up.
And by the way, Nick Sirianni keeps bringing up Trey Sermon. He talks more about Trey Sermon.
Don't forget Trey.
A damn word about Rashad Penny. He might start worrying. He keeps bringing up Trey Sermon. So don't forget Trey Sermon as well.
I agree with you on that front, even though 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if it was 3, so be it. But I think it was as little as 2 years ago. I said that I thought the best wide receiver in the National Football League was the guy who got out of town in New England yesterday. That's how much I thought of DeAndre Hopkins. I had him ahead of Devontae Adams as the number 1 wide receiver in football. So I think he's dropped further than the running back has. I actually think he is still top 5 in all of football. He might be top 4 for me. But you're right. The Eagles just don't pay that position, and that's not going to change now. He's not going to have a come to Jesus moment. Oh my God, I guess I have to pay running backs now.
No,
not going to happen.
No. Yeah.
He's not doing that.
Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, look, they are. I think they're going to be fine at running back, and if they are fine at running back, and I think a lot of teams are going to look at what they did and say, that's the way to go. And it's going to continue, unfortunately, for running backs. There'll always be 1 or 2 who are a little bit of an outlier. And maybe that turns out to be Bijan Robinson. Maybe it doesn't. Christian McCaffrey's in that category. There'll always be a few, but for the most part, teams will replicate what the Eagles have tried to do. And you already see it, by the way, and to use Dalvin Cook. That's what Minnesota's doing. Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, Kene Wango. That's the same as the Eagles. They got some talent, and if they produce, why pay? Why pay that position?
Let me ask you a major theoretical question, because we haven't even talking about these two guys who are at similar places in their career, not exactly the same. Hopkins a little bit older, Cook a little bit younger, but we're projecting that Hopkins will get paid more purely because he's a wide receiver, not necessarily because his game has gone down further and he is older. Well, he get paid because he's a wide receiver. John, when are we going to see high school kids, age 16, best player on their high school team as a sophomore, and are scoring more touchdowns than the rest of the team combined? When are we going to see the running back who runs it in 20 times in his sophomore season go to the coach next year and go, yeah, by the way, I don't play running back anymore. I play wide receiver because I'm not good. I'm going to the National Football League. I'm going to go to college for 3 years.
I think we're already there. I think most guys already do that. I think they're savvying up to there's so many wide receivers coming into this league every year. This was a disappointing season for the wide receivers at the top of the draft, and they still went. There was that little cluster. I forget where it started. Like
in the 20s. Yeah, it started later than I thought it was going to start.
Yeah, where I think it was 4 in a row went. I mean, I think that's already started, Jody. Yeah, guys don't want to play running back anymore. It used to be the marquee position. Now it's obviously quarterback, but yeah, I mean, I think that's already started. It's number 20, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then it went Quentin Johnston from TCU to the Chargers, Zay Flowers from BC to the Ravens, and Jordan Addison from Southern Cal to the Vikings. Bang, 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 bang. And they're all good players, but that's compared to what we have seen coming into the league. That's a bit of a down year at the top. But you start at Marvin Harrison Jr., man. I mean, he's going to be
a top 5 pick next year. Forget about the 20s. He's going to be single digits because wide receivers are valued and are paid, and we'll see it next year in the draft. It's funny that high school kid who, the best player on the team used to be the running back. Now he wants to be the quarterback. And even if he can't throw, well, I'll figure out how to throw, but I'll run because they like running quarterbacks now in the National Football League, guys who make plays with their legs. So quarterback number 1. Secondly, wide receiver 1. I would say wide receiver 2 might be now a young man's at age 16 choice to actually be on the team if you could dictate terms. If you're far and away the best player, you might go that far. The game has changed from when you and I were just youngsters, J-Mac. All right, we got Kevin Kincaid coming up. He's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. And if you don't follow Kevin on Twitter, you should. What's his handle on Twitter? I had it punched up here before.
I think it is. Let me pop it out. No, I think it's an underscore in there. So let me get it right. Let me pull it up for real quick. I think it's Kevin _ Kincaid. Yes, Kevin _ Kincaid, KINKEAD, by the way.
You can either go to his Twitter or the Crossing Broad Twitter, which it's also posted. You'll see the highlights from yesterday's charity flag football game down at the Bubble in South Philly. And I got to give him his props. We're going to bring him on here.
We're going to do some film watching.
That's good. That's good that he's not logged on here because I don't want him to hear me say this. He looked good. He had burst. The highlight that they posted on his Twitter account, damn, he can actually move. I was just drinking beers with him 2 weeks ago. I didn't think he had that left in the tank. Kincaid can actually play a little bit.
Man. He stuck his foot in the ground and went.
Man.
By the way, our buddy Braylon Moore was on the show a couple weeks ago. She was like Kelsey blocking downfield. She got off.
Really?
I'm watching the film. Now, Devin Caney, also a friend of the show, she took a bad angle. She was on defense. She had Kincaid dead to rights.
Good.
In the middle of the
breaking
field.
Down this play and making Devin Caney look bad.
That's tough to do, by the way.
Yeah, not easy, but Johnny Mac's giving it his best shot here to make Devin Caney look bad. So we got Kevin Kincaid from Cross and Broad. He's going to join us coming up next. We'll talk to him about the Eagles and his own individual exploits next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got your Mega Mac guys here on Birds 365. We're lucky enough to be joined by Kevin Kincaid, lead writer for Crossing Board. All right, I almost feel like we got Mike Gill on the show. What T-shirt you got on there, buddy? You're rocking something.
Well, they are West Virginia guys.
Lean
so
back
they,
there.
They're thick
Yeah,
as
well,
steel.
we're representing my high school today, the great Boyertown area senior high school.
Yeah. Showing off the athleticism. Now I see that. The ego of you, Kevin Kincaid. Putting the highlights from the charity game, the NRG. Did you get an MVP trophy? Did you get it?
No, that went to Pat Gallen of the winning team. They went 2-0.
Right.
Yeah, we went 0-2. I cut the one great highlight that I was able to pull off. But if I did the full reel, there would be an interception in there. There would be some bad overthrows, and
yeah, see, that's what I said. The highlights are great, but I don't know the PFF grade. I got to see the entire film. I don't know if there's the consistency is there from play to play.
I had a couple guys in the end zone. I overthrew one guy so badly that he almost ran into a stack of like wooden pallets at NovaCare. And, but yeah,
you nearly got someone impaled. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, but they got it. They made us sign the waivers, Jody. So no lawsuits, right? So if you run through a wooden pallet, there's no lawyers coming for you. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun. They do this every year. It's from NRG. and they put together this charity game down at in the bubble at NovaCare, and they raise money for CHOP and Phil Abundance and Nemours and Big Brothers Big Sisters. And they do a great job with it. It's fun. We've been going down there and doing it for a while. And the winning team, actually, you get more money to the charity that you're representing. So it makes it a little competitive, because you know that you're playing to get more cash to one of those places, So it's fun. We try to get everybody involved, and the goal is to not get injured and not be too much of a hard ass. So I think we all.
I was impressed, man. You stuck your foot in the ground and went. Baby, you still got some juice. How many years of charity games do you have left? Here we go. Here it is. Look at the page. By the way, I give Breland more credit. She I think it was Breland who she looked like Kelsey getting downfield on that block. But also our friend Devin Caney, she had an angle on you.
There was a good battle going on between those two. Yeah, they were covering each other on both sides of the field. I mean, that was a nice little subplot there. There was a funny picture that I think the NRG people got where there was an awkward.
Yeah. They were trying to high point the football. I saw that one as well.
Yeah. No, it was good. Yeah, they it's a fun time. I mean, it's cool. They bring down former Eagles players come down, and they're sort of like your your coaches.
Who was your coach? Mark Farzetta said AJ Feely.
Yeah.
Who was the other coach?
Hollis is one of the other coaches.
Hollis.
Has a huge bushy beard now. He looks like Rick Ross. It looks great.
Really?
It's like a perfect look for him. Yeah. He's got the bushy beard. I think Sean Landetta was coaching the one team that we didn't play against, and who was the other? Oh, Jason Avant. Jason Avant was down there.
To be truthful with you guys, film on Hollis's beard, Kincaid making a nice cut and going into the end zone, or girls covering each other in a charity song. Yeah, that's the video I want. That's the video I'm saving. Hey, sorry, KK, I'm going to give you your props, then delete it and move on. I'll save that other video for years to come.
Yeah, no, it's fun though. I mean, it's a good to it's nice doing those things, and they their NRG has always been good about having us down and picking out some great charities, and they have representatives from the charities come down too, and they play as well. So it's nice to get to meet some of the CHOP people and some of the Phil Abundance people and whatnot. And it's a good time, and then we can, spray it around social media and throw the posts up and whatnot. And everybody gets I got my highlight reel thing, but I promise I wasn't playing too hard. I didn't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy who's like,
you don't want to be that guy taking it too seriously.
Do you remember? I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago, they had like a Phillies softball game down at Citizens Bank Park. And Kristen Rogers was working at Fox 29 at the time. I think she left and she went somewhere else, but there was video. Some guy like lost his footing or something, just completely clobbered her third base, and it was like I thought she was injured, but she got up and she was okay. But I always said to myself, right, your goal when you do these things is just not to be that guy. Just don't run over, the Fox.
Kristen's been on the show. She's a great golfer. So she's got some competitiveness in there.
Rule number one, don't get yourself hurt. Rule number two, don't get anybody else hurt. And
yes, don't get yourself hurt. Don't get anybody else hurt. Don't come across as a tool bag, and you should. Then that's considered a successful media charity game performance, I believe.
And don't run into any wooden pallets where you can't sue the Eagles because it's a charity affair. All right, let's get back to the birds for a second here. I've asked this of basically every guest we've had on the last week or so. Who's going to be starting right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles week 1 against the Patriots in New England?
Oh, God, this is like my least favorite topic. You had to start me off with this one, didn't you?
Suck it up. Get it done. Put your foot in the ground and go.
No, I think like Gilio wrote that story about like, you got to think about moving on from Jason Kelsey if it makes sense. It wasn't an everybody had the emotion.
Well, I missed that one. You gotta move on from Jason Kelsey.
Well, no, he was just kind of talking about the legitimate like business side of like, you drafted his replacement in the second round and you stashed him for a year. And, really it's unheard of when's the last time you heard of anybody stashing a center? You know, it's not to say that Cam Jurgens can't play guard. I'm sure he can play guard, you know, but I don't know if that was their plan initially. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I still think he's the guy who's going to play, right? But it does make it what we thought was a linear path to him being Jason Kelsey's successor, a little non-linear. I don't know if that necessarily screws things up, but I think we were all kind of under the impression that he would just kind of sit that year and then Jason Kelsey would walk. But you know, like if he sits for a year and then he plays guard for a year and he goes and plays center, you know, I mean, from all indications, he's good enough to do that. But it does kind of
larger perspective, Kevin. Why is everybody like that? Because that is sort of a sentiment, I think, more in modern professional sports. Oh, he can't sit 2 years. Why can't he sit 2 years? Who gives a heck? I mean, it's rare.
Yeah.
But you hear this, oh, he's the 51st overall pick. You got to get him on the field. Well, you got him for 4 years. I mean, ultimately, the goal is him to be center. So whether that's in 2024 or 2023, is it that in the big picture? Is that big of a deal?
No, I guess not. I think you're just looking to extract maximum value for a second round draft pick who's still on the rookie scale. You know what I mean? That's basically the only argument against it. I don't think you have people who are saying, well, you're going to screw up Cam Jurgens' development by moving him over to guard. I don't think anybody's saying that. I just think they're saying like, hey, you used the second round draft pick on this guy and like, you know, let's get him on the field. Right. I don't think it's
this team used a second round draft pick on a quarterback. 14 months after giving the largest contract at the time in franchise history.
Yeah,
that was a luxury pick, but it turned out to be a necessity.
Yeah. Well, I don't think but that's the thing though. It's a positional thing. Like again, I just thought it was really. I think it says a lot about Jason Kelsey that you would stash that his replacement would be a second round pick and a stash. Like it's just unheard of for the offensive line. There's a million stories of drafting quarterbacks and having them sit a couple years, obviously, you know, but I think it's the best testament to what Jason Kelsey is that, you know, you let him have a say in handpicking his successor, and then the successor doesn't necessarily have a direct path to replacing him.
And by the way, this is his third successor. I mean, Isaac Seumalo was drafted to be his successor.
Yeah, that's true.
In his 8th year.
That's true. No, that's true. I mean, it's great. You know, it's funny because we did the top 20. Well, I painstakingly did another top 25 Philadelphia athletes list.
Oh, I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that it's not. I'll say right off the bat, I'm surprised. There should be more Eagles on that list.
Well, you could have filled the whole thing. You could have filled the whole damn thing up with Eagles. You know, that's how good they are now. But I was going to say that Jason Kelsey is every year he's the hardest one to rank because, you know, if you're going purely on intangibles and fan connection and what he means to the city and you know his status as a Philadelphia Eagle, you could put him number one on any list. But how do I compare a center to a wide receiver or a quarterback or a guy like Bryce Harper or Joel Embiid? I don't know. I mean, you get these cross sport things, and that's one thing, but I don't know if Jason Kelsey is even the most important member of the offensive line. I mean, is the left tackle and the right tackle more important? They're interesting arbitrary discussions, but I get more pushback and I get more feedback on Jason Kelsey's placement every single time we do some kind of list like that. More feedback on him and discussion on him than anybody else on those lists.
That's what you're looking for, is more feedback. And if you're getting it, then you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you another subjective, hypothetical question right along those lines. Who's the most underrated Philadelphia Eagle? As per Kevin Kincaid's definition of underrated, which might be different than John McMullen's or Jody McDonald's or anybody else's. So you can't give a wrong answer, just a Kevin Kincaid answer. Who's the most underrated Eagle?
I mean, I think they're all pretty good. I think we all know that they're well, I would honestly say Jordan Mailata. You know, because you get a lot of talk about Lane Johnson. You get a lot of talk about Jason Kelsey, obviously, but I mean, I still think that we're all probably in agreement that the most important position on the line is left tackle or blindside tackle, you know, if you have a lefty. But I mean, the Jordan Mailata story just can't be understated. You know, they had a first round draft pick who was stuck on the bench because their 7th round developmental project turned into a stud. You know, that's going to go down when we look back like 20 years from now, 25 years, whatever. That Jordan Mailata draft pick and developmental job will go down as one of the best diamond in the rough.
Oh yeah,
moves made by any team.
Oh yeah, there's a reason Jeffrey Lurie brought it up. It's one of the only 3 times, Kevin Kincaid, that Jeffrey Lurie gave his opinion on draft picks. Russell Wilson, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. He's 3 for 3. He might want to delve in and give his opinion more often.
Yeah, right. Get your hands in there. Yeah. You know, it's funny because, you have this concept of like, these guys are plug and play compatible. You take them out of the first round, the second round, and they're NFL ready. Right. And I think like in all sports, not just football, but the idea of development is kind of like falling off a bit. That you have guys that don't take off that first year, that second year, but then you like look at what you've done with them. Look at what the coaching staff has done with them. I mean, basketball is the worst offender of this, because nobody used to care about the G League or the D League when it was the D League, right? And look at like what the Miami Heat were able to do with that this year, And I could go off into some sidebar about the Sixers here and their lack of attention to all that. But look at, Jordan.
I'm with you. I used to say to Mike Gill all the time. Forget about Sam Hinkie. Forget about the process nonsense. Yeah. That's been legislated to death. But their player development was horrible. It was horrible during his whole regime. It was like, you either draft a good player or don't. And if you don't get a good player, we're screwed. We'll get to the next bad record. Yeah. What about player development? Look at Tyrese Maxey. They developed him. What was he, the 21st pick? Something in that range.
Well, it's naive. It's naive to think, as elite as these athletes are, that like if they come out of school at like age 20 or 21 or 22 or whatever, to think that is a finished product. That's such a misnomer. That's such a naive way of thinking, because these guys still have so much further to go. But when you look back, Jordan Mailata should be the poster child for like talent identification and scouting and the developmental job. And the job that they did with him is amazing. Like you ended up with a franchise left tackle by picking a dude in the 7th round who had never played football before. It's insane when you think about it that way. I think we just kind of gloss over that sometimes.
Do the Eagles have a coach along those lines who can do that with defensive linemen? And I'm specifically thinking of one that they drafted with their 2nd pick in the first round. Not the guy they took at number 9. I'm talking about outside pass rushers and the like. Their guy, Josh Sweat, is a guy who wasn't a high pick and was developed. Derek Bennett was a high pick, supposed to be what he was supposed to be, didn't quite achieve there. Hassan Reddick, a free agent acquisition. Speaking of player development, do we have faith that Mr. Smith from Georgia will be developed correctly and have that same kind of success other defensive edge rushers have had?
To me, that's probably the biggest storyline going into the Eagles season this year, is it not? These young pieces on the defense and them converting, the larger question of them converting these, quote unquote, these. We say that they won the draft on paper. Okay, well, Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis are basically just got their feet wet last year, and now you got 2 guys coming in who are rookies. That to me is going to like be the pivot point on whether they go back to the Super Bowl or not, or even have the run that they did. But that's 4 dudes that you're relying on this year. What's 4 divided by 11? Like 40-something% of your defense, right? Or that's a ton of snaps for guys who are like still relatively green. I don't have an answer to the question. That's why I'm sort of vamping here. But I would just say very generically that's probably the number one focus for me, is on those 4 guys, is on the Georgia guys, because that's a huge chunk of your defense. And as much as we like to say, oh, they nailed the draft, these guys haven't done anything yet. Really, they have not done.
Last year, it's funny how quickly people forget. 2022 draft, there were 5 Georgia defenders in the first round, right? Starting with Trayvon Walker, who was number 1 overall, pretty good player, but wasn't, as splashy as say Aiden Hutchinson, who went number 2. Jordan Davis was next at 13. We know what he did here. Then you got to go down to Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, in Lewis Seen were all picked in the first round. None of them were. Walker was the best, is number 1 overall, but it's not like they're good. They're stars right away. Now that they might all become stars, to your point of player development, but the assumption that you get a finished product, I think, has become pervasive in sports as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, they're very. Aren't they just, excuse me, aren't they just very green in general on that side of the ball? I mean, Sean Desai, first year with the Eagles, these Georgia guys, Nakobe Dean, basically a glorified special teamer last year, Jordan Davis, who didn't play a ton of snaps relative to what you would expect from a first round pick, and then 2 rookies that you have on there. Brandon Graham's not getting any younger, right? The linebacker core is going to be brand new. The corners are going to be your strength along with Hassan Reddick, but safety is interesting. So it's just a lot of question marks over there. It's not. We had discussions. We talked about this on Crossing Broadcast where we were basically like, we talk about like theoreticals like DeAndre Hopkins, right? It's like any single guy who gets released, the article that goes up immediately is player X got released. Should the Eagles take a look at him? Right? It's like summer fodder for people who don't have anything to write, But we were talking about the concept of like, okay, well, the offense is already elite. Like, what is the next step for adding another offensive piece? Do you go from elite to very elite, or do you go from elite to like uber elite? It's almost like, where do you reach the point, John McMullen, where you get diminishing returns on that scale of like how much more talent can you add on that side? But then you come back on the other end and you're like, look, if they were in a shootout with the Chiefs and you think that the future of the NFL or winning is just going to be to win a shootout and just, look at the way that the 2 Super Bowls that they played in turned out. I mean, the defenses got gashed. All 4 defenses got gashed in those Super Bowls. So like maybe you just say, these are the pieces we have on defense. We're going to put all our eggs in the offensive basket and just try to outscore everybody. Like, would we be surprised if the Eagles win a bunch of high-scoring games this year?
No, I mean, Jeffrey's talked about it. That's, and look at the 2 Super Bowls. You mentioned it. And you're right. In the past, Super Bowl 52, what's the difference between 52 and 57? The 52 defense made the one play. The 57 didn't.
That is my takeaway line that I've been saying for the last 4 months now. Super Bowl 57 was Super Bowl 52 without the strip sack.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all it was. They gave up more points. They gave up more points and more yards.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In Super Bowl 52. I think I don't know what the possession numbers or the time of possession was off the top of my head, because the Jalen Hurts fumble kind of screwed all that up. That was an extra possession that the Chiefs probably should have had. But still, I mean, like, the bottom line is Jim Schwartz, Matt Patricia, Spags, and Jonathan Gannon, they all got cooked.
Yep. Every
So
single one of them.
And that's why
Schwartz was upset even after winning the game. He was upset.
That's why Derek Barnett's going to make the squad this year, because he made that one play that you're talking about. No, he's not. He's not going to make the team.
I'm laughing at the comments, by the way, because I have my kitchen in the background. Yes, the cabinets are like old fashioned wood. It's very 90s. Looks
good.
very 90s.
Good on you. It looks good from here. So here's my question. Come down for both of you guys. Who is going to coach Nolan Smith? Is it going to be Jeremiah Washburn, or is it going to be DJ Elliott? Because John loves to get involved in this.
That's not even a question.
What is an edge guy? What is a linebacker? Linebacker coach, outside linebacker / defensive end. Who is Smith going to be coached by? Is he going to spend any time in DJ Elliott's room, or is it purely going to be with Washburn?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Were there any clues, John, at like OTAs?
Yeah, he's being coached by Jeremiah Washburn. There's no open-ended. He's an edge rusher. Now, I was, because we, I think some fans get a little, when you get from 90 to 53, as I always say, now you might have a bunch of injuries. So I'm not saying if you're mid-season and 2 linebackers are hurt and you need somebody to play, Nolan Smith might have to play a little bit of all-ball linebacker, but they don't want him to play all-ball linebacker. And, the best indication he is being coached by Jeremiah Washburn, I've already asked him that question, but 2 days after the Eagles ended OTAs, he was out in Las Vegas at Von Miller's pass rushing camp. It's not at all ball linebacker camp. He's trying to pick Von Miller's brain. He is an edge rusher. I guess because he weighs 238 pounds, people are having a difficult time accepting that. Hassan Reddick weighs 235. I mean, he is an edge rusher. And the question is, how did they develop him? And we know how important the Eagles believe. They were trying to fix that fourth. Derek Barnett tore his ACL week 1 in Detroit. The Eagles want to come at you in waves. They have Reddick, they have Sweat, they have Graham, they had Barnett. And then they tried Patrick Johnson. They didn't love it. So they went out and traded for Robert Quinn. They want to come at you in waves. They now have that fourth pass rusher with Nolan Smith. And that's a luxury. They get to sort of, he doesn't have to go and play and be impactful. He can play 20% of the snaps and get sort of up to speed. And if there is an injury, he'll be forced to play more. But why are people into this Nolan Smith at all, Paul? Just because Nicholas Morrow stinks?
Correct.
And they say
there's your answer, John. They're scared about Nicholas Morrow being the starter.
But here's the thing, guys. Nicholas Morrow is a better all-ball linebacker than Nolan Smith is an all-ball linebacker. He's a better player. Now, Nolan Smith is a better edge rusher than Nicholas Morrow is an all-ball linebacker, but that's apples and oranges. If you're playing an all-ball linebacker, you're doing a disservice. Nicholas Morrow is better at that position. Is that hard for people to understand?
Well, I'm just glad that we have moved beyond the banal 3-4 versus 4-3 discussion, and that I know that was one of your favorites, John. Yeah, I'm glad that we have that it's more mainstream to accept the idea of being multiple, up front, because it's just kind of like, gotten rid of that like vapid kind of, they're going to play this way, they're going to play that way. I mean, that's like commonplace now. In the NFL, I don't think anybody really does. Any team talk about base 3-4 or 4-3 anymore? I feel like we've kind of moved on from all that.
No, it's five DBs are on the field 90% of the time. How can either be a base defense anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Kobe Dean was the Eagles' third linebacker last year. He played 34 snaps. I mean, he was their third linebacker. TJ stayed healthy. Kaiser stayed healthy. He played 34 snaps, and people are still talking. There are some people who still say 4-3-3-4. That's how much he was on the field. And by the way, those 34 snaps were not as a third linebacker. They were just garbage time as one of the two linebackers.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
They're not a 4-3, and they're not going to be a 4-3 anytime soon. KK, this is stuff that I'd usually see on your side. I didn't see it there. Between you and I didn't see it anywhere. I just wanted to know if you heard about it. Eagles put individual single game tickets up on sale the other day at 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you know how long it took them to sell out?
Less than an hour.
Was it that?
Oh, are you asking me if I know?
Yeah, if you knew, yeah.
Oh, no, I don't know.
You didn't see it reported anywhere, did you?
No, I can check. I do have a guy. I know a guy down there I can ask.
Okay.
So I can. That's a good story idea. Maybe I'll do that on a Friday while I'm sitting here icing my knee from the charity game.
Oh, icing the knee.
Yeah, the turf is unforgiving, man. Yeah, it's like
that turf is awful, dude. That turf is. Yeah. I mean, you can tell from watching the Eagles practice, just standing there. There is a huge difference from the grass to the bubble.
I thought I was going to have to do a. Oh my God, what's the Ravens coach? Brian Billick, and reach down and pull up the turf.
Oh, I was on the field that night when he did that.
Real quick, can I just say real quick, because now I moved back to the suburbs and I grew up playing on grass, but when we were playing soccer leagues and everything else in the city, it's all turf. The difference between turf and grass cannot be like understated. It is that bad.
Oh, yeah.
So when you hear these guys say that like they hate playing, I don't know, they don't like playing at like MetLife, right? Because of the turf on there, right?
Yeah, it's terrible.
That is absolutely like a real thing. It just you don't have any like when I play on grass, I feel pretty good the next day, and I can do like pretty much anything. When I play on turf, like the recovery time is almost double. Like you can feel it in your joints, like your knees, especially because there's no give. You know, you're coming down on like, you know, you got the grass and you got the like little rubber pellets, and there's like a cushion underneath it, but underneath it's like concrete. So there's no give on that, and that's my diatribe on that real quick.
It's a good diatribe. I agree with you 100%. Now, last one for me at Kevin _ Kincaid. Make sure you follow Kevin on Twitter at Crossing Broad. They do a tremendous job. Here's one I've been meaning to run by you because I want your thoughts on this. Did Nick Sirianni do an okey doke on us and replace Shane Steichen and Sean Desai and Jonathan Gannon with 2 people? Because he has these new roles. He's got Marcus Brady is the senior offensive assistant. Matt Patricia is the senior defensive assistant. They didn't exist before. Those roles on this staff didn't exist. Did he replace those guys with 2 people? And we just haven't figured it out yet?
Well, that's interesting. Well, that would be different than what Doug did a couple years ago, where he had like assistants but no coordinators, right? Or what was the title of the primary?
Yeah, he had Rick. That was the Rich Scanzarello sort of era. That 12.
That was foisted on him, right? That wasn't a Doug choice.
No, it was more of a Rich choice. Like Rich, that was a mess. Well, I need 45 minutes to do it.
No, wait, but it was confirmed that Brian Johnson is calling plays, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's what I look at more than anything. I mean, the structure is the structure. I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's like it's all those guys are going to be involved with a collaborative game plan and what. I mean, to me, the most important thing is who's calling the plays. You know.
All right. Well, then I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
Is it an insurance policy? You know, because you have 2 unproven coordinators for the most part. Brian did it in college. Sean did it for 1 year in Chicago. And all of a sudden, you have Marcus Brady, offensive coordinator in this league. Matt Patricia, longtime defensive coordinator, head coach.
Yeah.
Are those insurance policies in case the young guys with no experience can, hey, we got a safety net?
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. You know, I mean, I'm sure that you are looking at things differently when you lose both of your coordinators in the same season. You know, I think coaches are always like tinkering and thinking of structure too. You know, I mean, that's been like a kind of a trendy thing in the last like 5 years or so, is not to necessarily have like the traditional offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, but assign different roles to these guys. But you know, it's hard for me to like. I'm interested in that topic. It's always hard to talk about though, because like, unless you're in the building, and unless you're part of like the game planning and the day-to-day, that kind of stuff, it's hard to talk about it with any kind of authority. You know what I mean? That's why the Frank Reich and John DiFilippo thing killed me. It like took my soul over like for the 5 years that we were arguing about that, because it's like Frank Reich didn't call the plays, right? So unless you were like unless you bugged that room and had like we were spying on them, like the NSA or something like that. Or is it the TSA, the NSA, whatever it is?
NSA.
Unless you're like, unless you're like,
just,
unless you're spying on them, or you were like a fly on the wall in that room, like nobody was ever able to like quantitatively measure the amount of like the contribution that Frank Reich had to that. So when people had this take where they were like, well, it was Frank Reich and John DiFilippo and Doug wasn't doing anything. Well, I mean, there was never going to be any way to prove that or disprove that definitively. You know what I mean? So that's why it was always like a N/A, not applicable for me. It's a good topic, John. I just don't. I'll be honest. I don't know what to.
But you know what? It's a legit topic, as you say. If you've got ears behind closed doors and everything, and then you get the answer to those questions. If not, we're all outside speculating. I'll prove it to you, Kincaid. Who's the assistant head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh, I have
literally.
No
it's Jamal Singleton. Literally.
Literally. That's his title. There's only one assistant head coach of the Eagles, and it's the running back coach. And if I had given you 5 guesses, you might have gone 5 different directions before you got around to Jamal Singleton.
But they still have him doing.
Read in between on the titles or whatever, and you just make yourself nuts. Yeah, I'd rather get a TSA mic in there and find out for myself with the conversations they're having. as to actually what is the power structure.
Yeah,
of
but
the
you know,
coaching
it's funny, man, because like, what did assistant head coach do for Deuce Staley? You know, like he had to leave anyway. It's like when like my wife gets a promotion and they just like make up. I'm just using this as an example. They just make up a title, right? Okay, we're gonna give you. Like, what do you want to? What do you want to be like? We'll make you assistant vice president or something like that.
There was a great. You're probably too young, Kevin, but there was a great. Are you a Cheers fan? You might have watched it on Netflix.
I'm old enough to have watched some of the show. I can't say it was on regular rotation.
There was a great Cheers episode. I tell Jody all the time. The whole premise was it was a Rebecca one for those who like the show. The whole premise was all the employees were disgruntled. They all wanted raises. Rebecca couldn't give them raises, so she gave them titles, and they were all happy because they got titles, made up titles. Carla was, executive director of waitresses, things like that. So, that's what the NFL has done with titles.
I forget what Woody was.
I think it was
Woody's
bartender.
title. He was the most excited about his title.
Yeah. My title is made up now because the company that owns us, when we sold Crossing Broad, we're now owned by a company in the UK. And like, I think somebody came up to me and asked me, they're like, what do you want your title to be? I was like, I don't know. Senior blogger. Senior. I think I'm senior managing editor is the name.
Senior managing blogging editor.
Blogger emeritus. I don't know, something like that. But again, it goes to, but it's interesting to think, like, I guess the question is like, does it even matter? Because we need to have eyeballs and like ears.
Well, you know what I love? I remember talking to Doug about Deuce. You brought up Deuce as assistant head coach. I remember asking him, well, what are his, added roles, more significant roles? And he did mention that he let Deuce run the developmental program. And then I asked Nick Sirianni, sort of the same thing. I said, does Jamal run the developmental program or anything of that nature? And Nick's more honest. He's like, no. And Kevin Patullo was promoted to associate head coach.
Yes.
Because
he's associate ahead of assistant. That's what we all inquiring minds want to know, John McMullen.
Well, Nick flat out said, no added responsibilities. We just went. Basically, it's just
No, somebody in the comments brought up the office thing, the assistant to the regional manager. With the I don't know. It's just fun. Hey, can I ask you guys a question real quick, or are we running out of time?
No, we're running out of time, but go ahead and ask.
Okay. Did you guys come to a conclusion on what happened with the Gannon and Fangio thing? Like what that timeline was? Like what the missing part?
People are trying to make a story out of nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
but here's I never understood. The thing I couldn't piece together was what precluded Fangio from joining the Eagles anyway, because he didn't go official with Miami until Gannon went official.
No, he didn't sign the contract. So my assessment was always he already agreed to terms, and Jody and I discussed. He already agreed to terms with Miami. Before the tampering aspect. My assumption was Bick's a professional. He's not going back on his word.
Yeah.
When he talked down in Miami, I assume you're talking about I cannot confirm or deny. Right. To me, he's saying, oh, well, maybe I would have screwed Miami, which makes him look bad. Because
he could have reneged, but you're saying he just gave a verbal and he honored his commitment.
Exactly. So to me, it's could he have pulled the Josh McDaniels? Yeah. He didn't sign the paper. So he could have said, I'm going to go to Philadelphia. But it didn't change the thought process of, look, the Eagles thought Gannon was going to be back when he didn't get the Houston job.
Mm-hmm.
And when Arizona popped up, which was later in the process, obviously, after the NFC Championship game, when you remember, Jonathan did that interview where he said he's back. And then Arizona popped up. Bick had already agreed to become the coordinator in Miami, who, by the way, also made him the highest paid coordinator in NFL history. So, is he going to renege on that? Maybe. I don't know.
And Jeffrey might have just matched it, but I don't think Fangio ever gave him the chance. I just called him lead writer at Crossing Broad. If you want to know his title, don't look on his Twitter because he doesn't
No.
put his title down there. But you should read him and be on his site all the time. Crossing Board, one of the best here in Philly. Mr. Kincaid, congratulations on your superior touchdown run yesterday. If for no other reason, you got to go to his Twitter to see the touchdown.
Yeah, got to see the touchdown. And now you're paying for it. Ice those knees.
I gotta say, I was impressed. I know I'm running the risk of getting his head a little swelled up here, but he looked pretty good, turning and changing directions.
Well, it was a success. Like I said, I didn't get injured. Nobody else got injured, and I don't think I came across as too much of a hard ass. So we hit all 3 bullet points there.
Very nice. KK, always a pleasure. Thanks, brother.
All right, see you guys.
We'll get Kevin Kincaid on again as the summer goes on here on Birds 365. Running a little late. Come back. We'll put a bow on the show. Stick around.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right. Appreciate everybody who streamed in today. Before you get out of Dodge, do us a favor, hit the like button, like, share, and subscribe. Give us a little help with our little love for the Birds 365 guys. John, here's the one thing I would say today that we definitively established, because we started with the most underrated player, can take it in several different directions, depending on your definition. Here's one thing I think we can all agree on. Don't try and read between the lines with titles with the Philadelphia Eagles, because Nick Sirianni admits, assistant head coach, any added responsibility? No. Associate head coach, any added responsibility? No. Howie Roseman doesn't give out the assistant general manager title for a decade, and then he gives it to the stats guy and the compliance guy? Are you kidding me? So if you try and figure out the Philadelphia Eagles via their titles, you're just banging your head against the wall. So don't even bother. Ask McMullen. He'll explain what everybody does. That's your best way to find out who does what with the Eagles these days. Good week, partner. I'll be here next week. How about you?
Yeah, man. Successful. We're getting the people through the lull, Jody. I think we're doing a good job too.
We're trying. Yeah. Summertime is nice to not have to sweat, not have to be overly worried, but it can also be a bit of a chore to come up with good topics. We'll try again next week right here on Birds 365 and 2 and 2 days, that is.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.